Hey, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. How are you, Matt?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you doing so far?
I'm great. I just did my morning routine and I'm off for this podcast.
What's your morning routine look like?
Well, I majorly focus on four areas, which is health set, mindset, heart set, and soul set. So, first of all, I work on my health set by exercising for around 30 minutes after I wake up at around 4:30. Then I meditate for 30 minutes. After that, I focus on my heart set by journaling, um, putting out all the ideas that's flowing through my head into my journal and emptying out myself. And then mindset. So that's where I absorb information and focus on my personal growth, learn new things, and set my mindset for health, wealth, and abundance.
That's beautiful. When did you start with this routine?
So actually, I was greatly inspired to start this routine after reading a book called The 5 a.m. Club by Robin Sharma.
Mm. Tell me a little bit more about how the book inspired you.
hmm I first started reading this book when I felt that I needed a real change in my life because you know how a teenage life could get really frustrating at times.
Right.
So so it really led me to the book and I purchased it online. Then I started reading it and discovering more about myself while reading it. And slowly, it helped me design the book. One of the really profound ideas that was shared in the book is called the 2020 formula. So that's where you divide your morning into three 20-minute sessions of things you would like to do to elevate your day.
That's very cool. And I meant to ask, where are you from in India?
I'm from the western part of India, from the state of Gujarat, and I live in Rajkot. That's the city.
That's awesome. Have you ever heard of Kenchi?
Uh, Kanchi, yes, that's down south. I've never been there though.
Never been there.
No.
So actually, a big part of my spiritual inspiration and my
hmm
routine was due
Okay.
to a guru from Kenchi, and his name was Neem Karoli Baba Maharaji. And a lot of his teachings kind of inspired me to keep moving through life and to create my own routines. So I
hmm
owe him a great debt of love. So uh, personally, I don't necessarily have one set belief. It's more along the lines of self inquiry. So
Okay.
it's, go inward, meditate, look within for the true answer.
hmm
And
Right.
just like yourself, I have a meditation practice every day.
So, do you meditate like in the morning or twice a day, or what does it look
Oh,
like?
oh my God, dude! I meditate so many times during the day randomly. It's
That's
really
awesome.
that's one of the few benefits of being a creative person that is slowly but surely making their art their life and their job. You
hmm
can kind of make your own schedule. So
Yeah.
I just when I'm feeling it, I just go sit down and meditate, and that's pretty much my life with obviously books, with everything else.
hmm
I
And
really
for me,
go for it. Yeah.
yeah, most of my creative inspiration and content flows through my intuition while I'm meditating. So it's like accessing these altered states and grabbing information and content through it.
Exactly. You take a step into your knowing instead of being
Mhm.
part of the thinking mind. You step into your knowing, And then from
Yeah.
there, the bigger you channels it all out. And I noticed that in your writing as well, and it's beautiful. And
Thank you.
it's only becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. You're only expressing more and more and more of that true self as you move along in your writing journey.
Yeah.
Plus, there's so much that you've already realized. There's so much that you've already developed into that it's. Can you imagine what 10 years from now is going to look like?
Awesome, I guess. Well, I like to live my life spontaneously. So, whatever is in the moment, I like to enjoy it the most.
Right. What do you feel uh, have been your biggest, I would say, roadblocks to your growth, and how do you think that you've moved through those?
Um, I would say the biggest roadblocks would be my own personal beliefs that I had cultivated unconsciously during my early childhood, and moving through those roadblocks, and with spirituality being there guiding me along the way. I think I've been able to slowly clear those out and install new beliefs which are abundant and unlimited, and which represent our true essence as human beings and consciousness.
Right. Do you feel like your family was what influenced your beliefs, or was it culture? What do you feel was the biggest influence to what you believed before you started meditating and changing your life?
As you know, I come from India, and Indian children are majorly influenced by their family and culture both. So it's those those beliefs that somehow get into the heads of children from very young age. And oftentimes, I when I see among my peers, they find it really difficult to overcome such beliefs. But uh, the spirituality does really help along the way so much.
Right. And you know, I kind of I've talked about this before, but I think it's hilarious how in Indian culture, how the guru, the reflection, the Atman, uh,
Hmm.
this is a person that is not necessarily subscribed to the culture that they're living in, but religious people, go to a guru to seek worldly advice. But the guru is not religious. The guru is the true self. The guru is the God come in form. So
Hmm.
I think that's just it breaks down so many barriers for anybody who is kind of stuck in tradition to
Hmm.
realize that the guru, the true self, that guru is not in a religion. It's not in a culture. The guru is somebody who has transcended that and is somebody who is speaking from a place of oneness, from a place of love and surrender. And I think that actually in India, that's the place where this really was cultivated in the world. I think that in India, this is the place in which, I mean, obviously across the planet, there have always been beings that have come to a higher awareness, but India
Hmm.
is definitely a birthplace of enlightenment per se.
Yes, yes, very well said. So, as you said, East has been the hub of, I guess, spiritual beings,
Yes.
and it goes back to 5,000 years ago, since the Buddha and the Mahavira and
Mm-hmm.
many other spiritual beings.
Which of these spiritual beings do you feel has influenced your practice the most?
Um, so currently there are a few gurus that I follow. One of which is Sadhguru.
Mm-hmm.
You might have
Oh
seen some
yeah,
of his
beautiful.
videos on YouTube. Yes. Next is Osho.
Mm-hmm.
I'm profoundly enchanted by the
I'm
wisdom that
actually
he shares.
staring at his book right now, Trust. So yes,
Oh, nice.
Osho's awesome.
Yes. I guess many way he was controversial, but he was controversial in a right way.
He was controversial in the way that he challenged and triggered people, and
Hmm.
I think that's very healthy.
I think that really made people think from a different perspective of who they really were.
It's so true. Have you ever? I think I'm about to maybe give you somebody new if you haven't listened to this person or read their book yet. Have you ever read any of Ram Dass's books?
No, I haven't. I have came across the name though. I have seen some of your posts regarding his quotes.
Right. He actually. So I'll give you his backstory if you want.
Sure.
So he was a Harvard professor in the 1960s who was trying
Mm-hmm.
to find the secret to enlightenment, the secret to going within and reaching a state of peace and oneness in oneself. He
Mm-hmm.
started his experiments through psychedelics, and it just wasn't doing it for him. He got thrown out of Harvard. He was publicly shamed, but he ended up traveling to India and
Mm-hmm.
traveling for a very, very long distance across India to find his guru, whose name was Neem Karoli Baba. And when he met his guru knew facts about him that he hadn't told anybody, and he knew things that a normal human person shouldn't know. And these facts shattered Ram Dass's belief about who he was and about what he had been doing with his life. And for the
Mm-hmm.
first time in his life, he finally felt like he was home. And from that point, he devoted his life to the service of the Guru and the service of the One through love and compassionate action and service in the world. So uh, I just think part of life is about the journey. It's about the journey. It's about becoming. You cannot become. I mean, we come here to remember. We come here to turn the light switch back on. And I feel like the box that people have been in for a very, very long time has been very, very small. And the box that we're moving into is a much, much larger one. And it's expansive, it's able to bend. No longer are we going to ridicule people just because they think something different or feel something different than us. You know?
Mm-hmm.
What would,
Yeah.
yeah, go for it, man.
Yeah, absolutely. So sometimes I like to look at it as when we are born, we are already full 100% of life in itself.
Mm-hmm.
But as we grow up, we catch up all these beliefs and traditions and customs, and we fill ourselves with that. And then when we are on the path of the spiritual journey, it's about unlearning of all that stuff and becoming of who we really were, like the state when we were born.
Exactly. That's beautiful. And that's a Ram Dass quote as well. Ye cannot enter the kingdom of heaven until you become like a child. You cannot you cannot enter the heart, fully embody the practice, and be until you purify yourself and go through the process of unlearning. And
That's very true.
in my life, that's been an incredibly traumatic process. That's been a process of having to go through, whether it be physical or mental hurdles that take months and months and months. So
Hmm.
it's not an easy process by any means, but what in life that is worthwhile is easy. Life was meant,
Yes.
life is dual. Life is meant for the struggle, and life is meant for the happy moments. It's not one thing.
Absolutely.
How have you been moving through this time in the world? With COVID, with all the changes happening in the world.
I've been trying to keeping myself productive and mindful at home. Here in India, we are at lockdown, so it's like a curfew, so you cannot go out of your home except you want to buy groceries or some essentials.
Right,
So
right.
it's pretty much just staying at home. So there are things that I've been working on. I've been taking new online courses on spirituality, which has had enormous impact on me. One of the new things I discovered is the Silva Ultramind
Tell me a little bit about that.
techniques. So Jose Silva was from Texas who developed the Silva Ultramind system. So it's he developed mind techniques through which you can enter altered states of reality. So your brain, for example, currently we are recording a podcast, so our brain is functioning at beta level, which goes from around 14 to 21 brain cycles per second. And so for instance, when we meditate, our brain goes into the alpha state, which is about 7 to 10 cycles per second. And when we are in alpha state, that is the state uh, when we are in complete relaxation. And that is when insights and ideas and all the creative things flow to us. And then there is another deeper level than alpha. It's called theta. And during the theta level, we are completely relaxed. So, for instance, the monks who have been meditating for years, spiritual beings, gurus, they when they meditate, they reach the theta state of being, and that is around more than 4 to 5 brain cycles per second. And so it's accessing this different altered states of reality and being able to create your own reality for the good of humanity and for yourself.
Exactly. And I actually didn't realize that I've been using what you're saying all along. For years and years and years, I've been meditating with theta, with alpha, with beta, with heart chakra frequencies.
Mm-hmm.
And little did I know that all along I was using this method that you're speaking of. How I stumbled across it was I was just like I was looking for a new meditation music that would get me into the flow of it
Mm-hmm.
years and years and years ago. And through that process, it was kind of like, honestly, it was probably one of the major tools in my life uh, that I was able to step into that led me down the path of having meditation as a regular practice.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, first of all, theta frequency is incredibly, incredibly helpful and incredibly awesome. And
Absolutely.
I feel like when you meditate in theta, you are definitely more open to inspiration and to receiving guidance from higher self.
Yeah.
Uh, I remember all the times that I used it, and it was a lot of fun. Definitely. Where uh, where do you see yourself going? What do you feel? Uh, do you, what I meant to ask you earlier? Do you see yourself writing a book of your poems?
Well, actually, I don't know yet because if I feel that I have a good enough collection to offer to the world of my poems, uh, I would definitely consider writing one. And I've also thought of writing a book on spirituality, of all my ideas and insights that I um, receive while meditating. So I've been jotting them down in my personal journal. So if I feel they're good enough to be a part of a book, I'll definitely
Right.
write it.
A- And I'm here to tell you that your poems are definitely good enough to be part of a book.
That means
And
a lot. Thank you.
your poems online are good enough to be on a book. And I'm sure if you put them all together, that would equal a book. And uh, service doesn't always look like what you think it's going to look like. Service is a very wide thing.
Mm-hmm.
Your poem, your one poem, could completely transform someone's life. And you may look at the poem and say, I don't know if that's good enough to share with the world in that way. But maybe somebody reads it and they're just like, wow. And then they're expanded. We just don't know what other people need and what they're feeling. And I think that any time that you're ready to put it out will be the right time,
Mm-hmm.
because you do have the inspiration. You're doing it in a positive, true energy to yourself. So it's going to be a message that's going to serve people no matter what you do.
Thank you for inspiring me. I will definitely work on it.
And it takes time, and that's one thing you've really got is time.
Yes.
So it's a book is not something that you do in a day. A book is something that you work on for months or maybe even years.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But that's just my experience. Unless you're me, then you just for some reason decide to put them out like once or twice a month, and it's just stupid fast. But you don't have to do it like that. That's just when I'm the kind of person that tends to say, hey, like this is a poem. I wrote it through my meditation. I wrote
Mm-hmm.
it through inspiration. And, maybe it's not my best work, but I'm going to share it just because. And I think that self-kindness, that self-compassion is very, very crucial for us artists,
Yes.
because we deal with a lot of self-judgment when it comes to our work, and we require to combat that a lot of self-compassion.
Yes. It really required a big part of me to believe that when I post my poems on Instagram, that people would find something of value out of it. But slowly, I'm beginning to open up and put out my message. And I hope people would find what I expect them to find, the true value and the highest, and realize the highest vibration of their being, that is love.
I think they are, and I think that they're doing it. No matter what you think, no matter what the mind is going to think or say about a certain poem, if it's coming from your heart, if it's coming from your intention to create from that place, then they're going to feel it, and the mind will try to grasp onto it and try to make it whatever it wants to make it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not important, because the mind is wrong always.
Yes.
That's one thing that uh, my traumas, my life, all of the horrible things that I've experienced in life has taught me, that it's all PTSD, it's all life experience, it's all subject to come and go, but it's not the truth. It's not stable. It's an artificial thing
Mm-hmm.
that I have the power to kind of step back from and be like, wow, isn't that neat? It's kind of cool that my thoughts are they're rebelling today.
Yeah, mind is really a tool if you use it wisely, and it can work against you
Right,
if you don't.
right. And there was a quote by a spiritual teacher. I can't remember who it was,
Mm-hmm.
and they were just like, the mind is an awful servant, but an amazing servant, but an awful leader, and the heart is an amazing leader, but an awful servant.
Yeah.
And Yeah.
That's very well said. Because I recently read an article where I just discovered that our brain has neurons and our heart too has neurons which function independently. So when we
That is, yeah, I read that as
so
well.
when we actually quiet our mind, we can actually make decisions from the heart, which are uh, good for ourselves and true to our authentic self.
And another thing that I notice between cultures per se, when I speak to people from different cultures, like I've spoken to people from New York, I've spoken to people from Australia,
Mm-hmm.
different cultures. I notice that when there is a person who is even, I would say, raised in a culture that promotes meditation, that promotes self
Mm-hmm.
inquiry, that promotes these things, there on a big scale, there is so much more uh, space and peace in between the two participants. There's so much more silence is okay, if that makes sense.
Yes.
I feel like in my daily life, with noticing other people throughout the grocery store, driving their cars, there's just so much noise going
Mm-hmm.
on in their heads and in the world. But I feel like when you go certain places, and if you like, for example, I'm a Westerner, so if you're a Westerner and you go to India, you notice the difference in
Mm-hmm.
communication, because I'm noticing it right now, how much respect there is and how much space there is and how much allowance there is to be able to convey an idea. And that's not something that us as Westerners are necessarily used to.
Yes, I understand. So,
We truly, truly are not used to being able to have the grounds to express safely.
I actually experienced that while I was in US on my exchange year.
Tell me a little bit about that.
So a couple of years ago, I was selected as one of the 36 participants to go to the United States for a full academic year and experience the culture, the high school life by living with a host family. So,
That's actually incredibly awesome. I had no idea that you went through that. So tell me about your experience in the US. What was
sure.
it like?
So now, first of all, I had a very loving host family. I was placed in Maryland College Park, which was a very nice
Mm-hmm.
location. I enjoyed it there thoroughly. My host family really loved Indian food, so I had the opportunity to cook it for them. Do you like Indian food?
Indian food's great. I don't have it enough though.
You should.
Indian food is truly great. When you came to the U.S., did you make a lot of new friends? What was did you feel? What do you feel like the difference in vibe was between here and India?
Well, I had a massive culture shock in the high school life, I think, because it's a lot different. When the structure of classes, uh, how the students behave in front of teachers, that vibe was completely different. Uh,
Yeah,
for instance, in US, students just frankly talk with their teachers, oftentimes without giving them respect they deserve. And here in India, it's not that common to see a student disrespecting their teacher.
that's so true. And I noticed that because, just like yourself, I'm
Mhm.
empathic and I can feel that. I can feel respect. I can feel that spaciousness, that's it's allowance for somebody to express what they have to say.
Yes.
And I think that's something that students in the United States could definitely benefit from.
Mhm.
I think that I think that meditation should be part of the curriculum.
Yeah,
I think that it's much, much more important than any of the other classes.
absolutely. Mindfulness is one of the single most important thing one can cultivate from the early stages of their life, because it is
Exactly. And
taking
right.
it is taking through that single step that other steps on the spiritual journey will unfold for them.
Exactly. And I think that here in the US, if things would change so dramatically if we had a standard mindfulness and meditation course in our schools from a young age, because what we all value as human beings, I kind of feel on a bigger scale is changing, but it won't be completely changed until we realize that the future lies with children. The future lies with the people who we're teaching. So, as an adult, I would say it is our responsibility to cultivate mindfulness, to rise, to go to seek inward, to do self inquiry, and then to share that gift with the children, to remind them of the truth of who they are, so they don't get put into a bad position like we were put into, where we had to de-learn everything. So I think that if, like, I do believe this is happening, and I believe that it's going to keep happening more and more as awareness rises. But the children are going to be very, very different coming up, because they're going to have the potential to stay in that, like you said, to stay in that beginner's mind, to stay in that
Hmm.
that heart center.
Yes.
And I think that's what we need in the world. We need more innocence. We don't need more uh, mathematicians or people that are over intellectual. We need more. We need more monks. We need more people that are moving through the world with compassion.
Yes, very well said. We also need more light workers and beautiful souls who cherish
We
their
definitely do.
existence on this planet, thinking that this is the most beautiful paradise they can have.
And the truth of it all is that it is the most beautiful paradise that can be had. The only thing that's keeping you from that paradise is the mind, and it'll keep doing it and doing it and doing it until you finally work through all the stuff, and then you'll be able to see with a clear view that, wow, everything is perfect. And perfect doesn't mean that everything looks exactly the way you want it, or that everything is good. Everything is perfect because everything is of God. Everything is of the divine. It's all of light. And everything in creation has an aspect of the one, of the light.
Yes, yes, very well said. Everything is I have been also following another spiritual master. Uh, he's known as Master Sri Akarshana, and he puts it that everything is energy and energy is everything. So uh, when we see ourselves as energy and everything around us as energy, we our perception of reality shifts completely, because we start communicating with our environment through vibrations.
Mm-hmm.
And when we feel a certain emotion, that is simply energy in motion. So whatever we are feeling, we experience.
Yes. And the best part about that is it doesn't happen on our time when we experience the manifestation of that energy, of that feeling. It happens in the divine's time.
Mhm.
It doesn't happen when you say, hey, I really want that new car. And even if it is a high claim, even if you're claiming it from a place of need for your family, even if you're claiming it from a place of truth and
Mhm.
service, you don't just receive it. It will come, but it doesn't come in the time frame that you set for it, because only the small self, the mind, will set time. So it'll set, oh, this should come then, and then if it doesn't come, then the person gets upset. So I don't. I know that there's books out there like The Secret that tell you, to attract your perfect life, you just have to believe it, and you have to allow it to come to you, and set your intention to it. And I agree with that in part, but I also think the other part of that equation is you have you have to be in deep surrender to whatever happens, and two, you can't set a time frame for it. You can't say this is happening tomorrow. You can't say this is happening next week. You just allow it to come, and you live your life.
Exactly. When you live, yes,
And I
go ahead.
think, go for it. No, you're
Thank
perfect.
you.
Go for it.
So when we live from a place of complete surrender, that is when we experience the true nature of life, and we function as life itself. Uh, the the whatever situation we are put in, if we are joyful within ourselves and act from a place of complete joyfulness, then whatever the situation may be, whether it is suffering or pain, we will be able to move through it smoothly and peacefully.
Beautiful. It almost elicits no words. so so now to get a little bit into your poetry. When did you start writing poetry?
I started writing poetry 3 years ago. I was really inspired by the movie Dead Poets Society to start writing poetry.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
a
I
great
love that,
movie.
especially the way Robin Williams defines poetry. That really resonated with me on some level, deep level. And from that, after watching the movie, I talked myself into writing beautiful poetry. And as I began to feel that I can write poetry, it just started flowing through me.
Remind everybody what Robin Williams said.
Sure.
Remind everybody.
He said that poetry is beauty, romance, love, uh, business, engineering, that are noble pursuits to sustain life. But poetry, it is something which is a beauty and which we experience it within ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not able to quote it perfectly,
And
but that's the gist of it.
no, it was perfect. Uh, so tell me a little bit about what poetry. Let me think about this question because I've got a good one for you. Was poetry a big factor in your what I meant to ask earlier about the schools. So is poetry something that's taught in school in India?
So we have a subject, English, and we study poetry and prose in English. It is combined in that subject.
That's
But
awesome.
no,
You know,
no,
yeah. I was gonna
Mhm.
say this real quick. In the United States, we could really benefit from learning some other languages uh, in depth. In a
Yes.
real, true way, where we actually become uh, more fluent in that language. It's not as common
Mhm.
here. Everybody else in the world has to speak English, but you don't see as many people in America speaking
Yes,
Hindi.
right.
So I think that it should be more equal in that
Mhm.
way. But keep going with your story. I wanted to just say that
Yeah,
real
so
quick.
poetry, for me, we study that in English class, but it's not necessarily that they teach us how to feel the poem. It's just they make us learn the poem, and there are some questions that we have to answer regarding the poem, and then that's it. But if a student takes certain effort to learn poetry and how to write it. They don't actually teach how to write poetry,
No.
but
And
mhm,
that's the thing about class. You know, they'll give you a rubric. They'll tell you a lesson plan, but you can't teach somebody to write poetry. It has to
yes,
come from the
yes,
heart.
absolutely. So that yes, go
Uh,
ahead.
yeah, go for it. No, you're good.
Okay. So yeah, so then I began to uh, read different poetries which really inspired me by Shakespeare, John Keats, all the romantic writers, and Walt Whitman, who wrote on
Hmm.
life. And then I read their poetry, and I was really enchanted by them. And then I started writing my own.
I think for me, first of all, I want to say that when I was in high school, I had a whole different life than I do now. I hated writing. Uh, I was a very blocked kid. I did not uh, have a spiritual practice in my life, and I had a lot of trauma that I
Mhm,
was going through. But uh, all of that stuff, uh, when I took poetry in school, it was very black and white. It was, here's a book, here's a haiku, write a haiku. It wasn't allow
mhm,
yourself to feel and write what you feel. It was write what's in the textbook. So I think that there's a big disconnect between education and creativity that needs to be bridged. There needs to be more human emotion in education and less sterileness. It feels like there's so much non-connection in a traditional education where I feel that what children and people want to feel and what they want to experience with school is something of value. They want to feel like what they're doing has value, and they want to feel like it's something that is giving them tools in a
mhm.
meaningful way. And I feel like that's kind of a way in which a lot of school has failed up to this point. There hasn't been that bridge. There hasn't been that creative connection.
Yes. Yeah, when you see the education system rankings, India and US are far behind. And one of the countries which doing the best is Finland. They allow students to pursue the subjects that they feel they are good in, and then they excel at those subjects.
And that's how we all are. We're not all of us are good at math. Some of us are meant for English. Some of us aren't meant for any of that. Some of us are
Hmm.
meant to be on TV. It's just everybody comes in with their own purpose, their own unique facet of skill that they can use in their life. They're attuned to that thing. And I think that if we allowed, like we
Hmm.
talked about earlier, more creativity, more openness in the school system, we'd see so many more students happy, succeeding, and serving the world and creating a world in which people don't need to stick to a certain system. They can allow
Hmm.
each other to be free.
Yes, it's like freedom we seek from the societal pressure and traditions that we've built up ourselves and against ourselves.
Exactly. And, I truly do feel that this is happening in the world,
Hmm.
but it takes time. And especially the education system takes time to change because new textbooks have to be written, new teachers need to be hired, new people need to grow into a place where they can teach children. So it's a time. It's definitely it can't happen right away, but I think it's something that as people awaken, as they are now, it'll just keep growing. There'll be way more light workers in 10
Yes,
years than there are
absolutely.
right now. So I can't wait to see that.
That
I
would be a
mean,
much more better world to live
that'll
in.
be awesome. Exactly. Exactly.
Hmm.
The best is yet to come. The best is truly
Yes.
yet to come in the world. What do you feel you're going to be doing for university? Do you think you're going to go
Uh,
somewhere, or do you think you're just going
I'm
to stay in
actually
India?
thinking of going somewhere abroad for university, but I still have no idea what I'll be pursuing. I'm confused.
That's great. Do you have any places in mind, any
Uh,
countries?
Probably Canada or US.
I would go to Canada,
Okay.
but that's just me.
That's a good suggestion.
British Columbia is
Hmm.
actually beautiful.
Okay.
That's Western Canada. It's actually really beautiful there.
Yeah.
Uh, Myself and Elena actually want to live out
Mhm.
in the West Coast, so we might end up doing that sometime in the future towards Oregon or northwest
Okay.
of the North
That's
America.
wonderful.
So I think we're getting close to the end, but we can keep going for a
Sure,
little while
sure.
longer if that's okay with you.
I love it. So, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Mm,
How
mhm.
did you, um, how have you managed to reach where you are now?
A lot of pain and a lot of suffering. Let me tell you that much. But it's been very gradual. It's been a process. It's been a process of uh, coming from years and years and years ago. Uh, an 18-year-old who meditated for the first time and was scared and had no idea what was going to happen when he
Hmm.
closed his eyes to meditate, overcoming some past sexually related traumas because I was
Hmm.
abused when I was a kid, and moving through that with spirituality, with meditation was a huge practice in moving through that, and then finding my voice and learning to channel my words in a way that I'd like to help. I'd like to think serves people, and that's. But going more into my journey, I would say that it's been a dance between fear and love, in a sense that, uh, especially as I've been going along, it was for a long time fear, 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 and more recently, love, 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 fear, love. there, and just like everybody else, I still deal with so much fear in my life, and I deal with, but I have the thing about my fear now is that I can take a step back and look at it. And as to before, I would just let it run wild. Whereas now, with the practice that I have, I can kind of take a look at my fears, take a look at what I'm feeling
Hmm.
in my body, take a look at my pain, and I can say, okay, that's not me, but I'm going to sit with it until it feels better. Or if it doesn't, that's all right, because it's it
Hmm.
has a right
You
to
develop
exist.
awareness towards it.
And and that was always the thing for me. I was always one earlier in my life to run from things, to run to this place, to run to that place, to say, oh, no, 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 I'm not going to deal with that thing.
Hmm.
I'm gone. I'm gone. But to learn to sit with things and to learn to stay true to the self. And these were the lessons that I learned uh, over time, and I'm going to tell you, it hasn't been an easy process. It's been a painful process. I mean, even up until recently, I was even doubting that doing a podcast was even going to be worth it and to serve anyone. But I had to move past that and realize that, Matt, it's really not about what you want or don't want. It's about getting a message out there of hope, of compassion, and to put your words out there and serve people and in a way that will touch people. And it's not, and another thing that I had to realize is it's not me doing it. It's not the little me doing it. It's the big me. And I just need to show up for the work and allow it to happen. And as I allow it to happen, it'll all happen. So my whole life, I guess, has really been me stepping out of
Beautiful.
my own way.
Your journey really reminds me of a quote by Jim Carrey. And the quote says that every decision we make is based either on love or fear. And he quotes as, choose love and never let fear take over your playful heart. So I think that pretty much
Exactly.
describes your journey very well. You choose love and you're getting your message
Right.
out there. People are finding something of value out of it.
Exactly. And the biggest hurdle for me in life when it comes to having to fit in is that you can tell yourself and you can exclaim to the world and you can say, I am going to follow my heart regardless of what the consequences are in society. I'm not going to let society tell me who I am. I'm going to allow my heart to tell
Absolutely.
society who I am. And and at the end of the day, abundance is generated from energy, which is generated from the heart, from the higher self, from oneness. You can go out and you can make a living, sure, but that is deeply, deeply unsatisfying if you're not doing it from the heart, if you're not doing it from a place of surrender and love. And my life has been moving away from having to feel like I've got to go make a living and sacrifice my spirituality to embracing my spirituality and learning that I have to let go of what I thought about money.
I think when we decide to do something good for the world and have an impact in lives of people, the resources just come by in synchronicities. It just flows to us.
I love that, and I do believe it. And this is exactly the message that we all need to hear. We all need to hear that you can follow your heart, and at the end of the day, no matter what, if you follow your heart, you will be whole,
Yes,
and you'll be
very
fine.
well said.
And I think we're going to end the podcast right there, because if it goes over an hour, then Anchor won't let me upload it. But I want to say that it was such a privilege talking to you. You are very, very wise, and I
I
appreciate your
am so
insight.
grateful to be able to talk with you. It actually took me a bit of talking to myself and getting out of my comfort zone to do this, as it is for the very first time that I'm doing this. So thank you so much.
Exactly. Keep flying out of your comfort zone,
Yes,
and who
thank you
knows
so
where you'll
much.
land.
Yes,
Enjoy your night,
and
or
you
your
have a good
morning,
night.
actually, over there.
Okay.